Boker Tov, good morning, good Yontif. We'll begin on page 135. We stand this day, all of us, in the presence of our God, youth and elders, women and men, those close to tradition and those who have been estranged. All are welcome in this community of prayer. All around the world, all Israel greets this holy day. We stand with them, a people united by our history and fate, linked in mind and heart to generations past, who stood before God to be cleansed of their sins in Russia, Poland, Germany, and Spain, in Morocco, Egypt, Brazil, and India. Our great-grandparents are here with us today, and our great-great-grandchildren as well. All are present in memory and hope. We stand this sacred morning, all of us, as one. On page 138.
Ma tovu alecha, Yaakov mishkenotecha, Yisrael v'ani berochastecha, avo ve'etecha, eshtachave elecha kodshecha,
on page 142. His brothers took Joseph and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Why does the verse tell us that there was no water? If the pit was empty, is that not obvious? It means that there was no water, but there were snakes and scorpions within. Our sages teach water represents Torah, source of our life and sustenance. When the mind is empty of Torah, snakes and scorpions will enter. Fill your mind with wisdom, with moral values and teachings. You will have no room for what is vulgar, trivial, or unworthy. And so it is written, those who love your Torah find peace. Guided by your words, they will not stumble. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Our words of study this Yom Kippur morning, written by our beloved senior rabbi, Ken Chasen, are found on page 148. We learned in Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Eliezer said, repent one day before your death. His students asked him, but do people know on what day they will die? He replied, all the more reason to repent today, lest one die tomorrow, and thus one's whole life will be spent in tshuva. Rabbi Eliezer's words reside at the heart of what it means to live a religious life. That is to say, the hardest time to embark on a sudden search for God is when a life-shaking crisis hits. It's nearly impossible to hand over the reins to God then, if we have spent our entire lives trying to wrest them away for ourselves. A peaceful coexistence with God is earned through a lifetime of humility and gratitude, wonderment instead of entitlement. There are surely many good reasons to pursue tshuva on a daily basis, but even the most doubtful among us would acknowledge that the kind of religious discipline prescribed by Rabbi Eliezer can provide extraordinary solace when we need it most. The famed 20th century theologian Paul Tillich taught that there is no such thing as an atheist. We always make something or someone our God. By demanding that we repent one day before we die, Rabbi Eliezer essentially asks each one of us daily, who is your God? Will your God be a source of comfort and strength when you're staring into the abyss, as we all will someday? Page 156. Blessed are you, Holy One, who has formed the human body with wisdom, an intricate network of channels, vessels, and openings. This wondrous structure and the flow of life within us allow us to stand before you and give thanks. Let us cherish this gift of flesh and blood, honor it as God's creation. Baruch atah Adonai rofei chol basar umafli la'asot.
Shan Shema Bekirbi, Shan Shema Bekirbi. Adonai
Baruch Hu u'Baruch Shemo
Asher beyado Asher beyado Asher beyado Nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol b'sari.
Page 177. What color is grass? The hurry eye said green, but following the sheen of spring woods, there stretched meadows marbled in such hues of yellow-green, red-greens, and blues merging, below, between, above. What color is grass? The thoughtful eye said, love. What color is love? The harried heart said, flame. But following the changing years, there poured prisms of delight and spectrum flowed out of the name, paling moons, stars, and sun. What color is love? The knowing heart said, one. We turn to page 178 and rise.
On the top of page 181. Those who dwell as scientists or laymen among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary of life. Whatever the vexations or concerns of their personal lives, their thoughts can find paths that lead to inner contentment and to renewed excitement in living. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is symbolic as well as actual beauty in the migration of birds, the ebb and flow of the tides, the folded bud ready for the spring. There's something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after the winter. We continue on page 185. Hineni, behold, I stand ready to listen and learn, to embrace in thought and deed, to proclaim with the whole heart the sacred unity of all being. You are the one who unites all things, who links life to life in a sacred chain. The forests anchored in the soil breathe air into our lungs. Our faces are reflected in the creatures of the earth. We carry the sea within us. Our fate is connected to rivers and deserts, our family a many-branched tree of life. All beings intertwine in you. All are encompassed in Adonai Echad. Thus, no man is an island. No soul exists apart. To say Echad is to know this truth, to see the whole world, humankind, undivided. Precious and holy are these words we speak. Adonai Echad, we proclaim you one. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael, be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha, vedibarta bam, beshivtecha bevetecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvshochbecha, uvekumecha, ukshartam leot ayadecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uktavtam, al mezuzot petecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
On page 197. Who is like you among the silent, mute, and inscrutable? You witness our pain. Once upon a time, the sea was split, and Israel marveled at your outstretched arm. How many have cried out since then? How many have sunk beneath the waves? Centuries of innocent blood, lives lost to hunger, war, to cruelty or indifference, and those who died with your name on their lips, and still they perish in distant lands, and still they languish on our chilly streets. Your creatures are drowning even now, so why should we sing? Ever silent, hiding out in history, you have your reasons, or so they say. You left us on our own, so let us give you leave. Withdraw into yourself, withhold your saving power. And we will live on in memories of joy, and stubborn and stiff-necked will cling to hope, and gather strength to fight the pharaohs when we must, and hold fast to freedom, and celebrate in song, and vow that we will never be among the silent.
Mi chamocha b'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, lo tehilot usefele. Shira chadasha, shiva ושמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומו בעזרת ישראל, ובדחנו מך, יהודה וישראל, גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני, גואל ישראל.
We continue with the Amidah on page 198. Please rise if you are able.
Adonai, שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chasdei Havot Ve'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava. Zochreinu l'chaim, Melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chotenu b'sefer ha'chaim, l'ma'ancha Elohim ha'im, v'chotenu b'sefer ha'chaim, l'ma'ancha Elohim ha'im. Melech ozer, u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, b'chayei hakol atah, Rav lehoshia morid atah, mechakel chaim b'chesed, mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, somech novim, rafeh cholim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayem emunato l'shenei afar. בחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני בחיי הכל.
You may be seated. On page 206. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? I sat in shul for years reading these words before I realized the answer. The answer to each of these questions is me. Who will live and who will die? I will. Who at their end and who not at their end? Me. Like every human being, when I die, it will be at the right time and it will also be too soon. Fire, water, earthquake, plague. In my lifetime, I've been scorched and drowned, shaken and burdened, wandering and at rest, tranquil and troubled. That has been my life's journey. Of course, I prefer to deflect this truth. I would much prefer to let the prayers talk about someone else, perhaps the fellow in the next row. It has taken a lifetime to reveal that defense as a lie. Prayer is not about someone else. It's about me. It is a frightfully succinct summary of my existence. And so now I read it again, but in the first person, and it makes me shiver. I will live and I will die at the right time and before my time. I will wander, but I might yet find rest. I will be troubled, but I may achieve tranquility. This is the central truth of the High Holy Days. This is what makes them Yamim Noraim, days of terror. We are vulnerable. On page 208. Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love. Your reign is a reign of truth. In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal. You record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself. For every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. We read together on page 210. And so a great shofar will cry, Tekiah, a still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, Behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into the world pass before you, like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock, when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments.
בראש השנה יקטנו, וביום צום כיפור יחתנו. בראש השנה יקטנו, וביום צום כיפור יחתנו. כמה ירון וכמה ישקיט ומי יטורף מי שלב ומי יתייסר מי עני ומי עשיר מי ישפל ומי Teshuva, Utefila, Utsedaka, Ma'virin et roa hagezerah.
On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age and who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine? Who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted? Together on page 214. But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. You are everything that we praise you for. Slow to anger, quick to forgive. You do not wish the death of sinners, but urge them to return from their ways and live. Until the day of death, you wait for them. You accept them at once if they return. Since you created us, you know our impulses. We are but flesh and blood. On page 216. We who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread, like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. But for you, ever-living sovereign, time has no limits. Your presence, unbounded by days and years, is everywhere, a glorious mystery none can decipher. Your name is worthy of you, and you are worthy of your name. In our name, you have linked with yours. If you're able, please rise.
נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשממרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר Care
234. Our God and God of our forebears, pardon our failings on this day of atonement. Erase our misdeeds, see beyond our defiance. For Isaiah said, in your name it is I alone, who wipe away your defiant acts. This is my essence. I shall pay no heed to your errors. And the prophet said, as a cloud fades away, as mist dissolves into air, so your wrongs and mistakes shall be gone. I will wipe them away. Come back to me, that I may redeem you. As you said to Moses, for on this day atonement shall be made for you, to purify you from all your wrongs, and pure you shall be in the presence of Adonai. We continue on page 244. Our God, divine presence whose path our ancestors walked, bless us now with words first bestowed on Israel in the time of Moses and Aaron, the threefold blessing given us through Torah that joins our hopes with theirs. Responsively, may God bless you and protect you.
May it be so.
May you receive the light of God's kindness and grace.
May it be so.
May God bestow favor upon you and give you peace.
May it be so.
Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha, Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha, Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. Ve'yasem lecha shalom.
On page 246. Let there be peace. Grant goodness, blessing, and grace, constancy and compassion to us and all Israel, your people. Please join with me. Avinu, bless and unite all human beings in the light of your presence. For your light has shown us a holy path for living, devotion to love, generosity, blessedness, mercy, life, and peace. In your goodness, bless your people Israel with peace at all times. Let us and the whole family of Israel be remembered and inscribed in the book of life. May it be a life of goodness, blessing, and prosperity. May it be a life of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, oseh hashalom. We have now a few moments for silent prayer. For those of you with prayer books in your hands, you can spend a little time pondering the words found on pages 247 through 251. For all of us, it's an opportunity to reach deep within our own hearts and souls to find the yearnings, the promptings that reside there and only there as we spend this time in quiet prayer and reflection. We continue on the bottom of page 253. If you're able, please rise.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu, Ken Banu Masim. Asei Manu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Asei Asei Manu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Asei Manu, Tzedaka v'chesed, ve'oshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'haneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'haneinu, ki ein banu masim.
Seder Kriyat HaTorah, our service for the reading of the Torah, is found on page 254. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, a meditation to remind us what we strive for, a chant that binds us to the chain of generations. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, a moment of purest solidarity with our people's hopes and history, an invitation to affirm or dissent, to challenge or believe, to ask why or say amen. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, flowing like waters that renew the spirit, refreshing and sweet to nourish the soul. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, every word a blessing, every verse a conversation with God.
Notzer chesed la'alafim, nosei avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh.
In this scroll is the secret of our life, from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema
In today's Torah reading, we encounter Moses on the cusp of realizing his crowning achievement, delivering the Israelites safely to the promised land. For 40 years, Moses leads this motley crew of irascible Israelites. In the hostility of the wilderness, the Israelites receive one blessing after another: freedom, manna, Torah. And throughout it all, God's enduring presence, a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Although Moses is Moshe Rabbeinu, considered the greatest of all prophets, God denies Moses from entering the promised land. He's allowed to go to the mountaintop and look out, but not to cross over. A couple of chapters after our Torah reading, it is written, God buried Moses in the valley, and no one knows his burial place to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were undimmed and his vigor unabated. With his remaining days, Moses calls the Israelites toward their better angels as they prepare to enter the promised land without him. After spending 40 years leading, cajoling, threatening, and nurturing them, he carefully curates his final instructions, hoping, really praying, it will be enough to sustain them there. It is a legacy moment. Moses lays out all the benefits, the abounding prosperity if they pursue the ways of Torah, and then the dangers if they stray. Ve'im yifnei levavcha ve'lo tishma ve'nidachta ve'hishtachavicha le'elohim acherim ve'avatam, and he goes on. But if your heart turns away and you give no heed and are lured into the worship and service of other gods, I declare to you this day that you shall certainly perish. You will not long endure on the soil that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. Moses is saying to the Israelites, this is on you. You will choose your own path forward. Follow the ways of Torah and be rewarded. Or worship idols and stray from the mitzvot, and the divine force of love and compassion will withdraw from you. The choice is yours. Rambam, the great 12th century rabbinic scholar, wrote, every person is endowed with a free will. If they desire to bend themselves toward the good path and to be just, it is within the power of their hands to reach out for it. And if they desire to bend themselves to a bad path and to be wicked, it is also within the power of their hands to reach out for it. Ve'im yifnei levavcha, but if your heart turns away. Moses' journey is about to end, and the Israelites will have to carry the burden and the blessings of Torah forward on their own. There is no magic to this formula. We either live our bestest, most righteous life, or the line ends with us. This is as true today with our 3,000-year-old Jewish tradition as it is with this young democracy we call America. Some of us feel like we are Moses. We have done what we can, and it's on the next generation to carry it forward. Others feel the weight of the children of Israel, charged with living the Torah into a new land. For all of us, 2020 is a legacy moment. How we show up will shape the future for generations and also define how we will be remembered. May it be that we scrape and fight, harnessing and directing our very life force, living up to the grit and vision of those who came before us to take on the challenge Moses laid out before our ancestors. Let us turn our hearts toward the mitzvot, turn our hearts towards what is right, turn our hearts towards organizing and getting out the vote, turn our hearts toward making some good trouble. This is our legacy moment. Let's meet it with eyes undimmed and our vigor unabated. Can you hear Ratzon? For our Torah reading today, we will read Deuteronomy chapter 29, verses 9 through 14, and then jumping to chapter 30, verses 11 through 20. You will find this text starting at the top of page 266 and continuing from the bottom of 267 through 268. You can follow along in Hebrew or English. For the honor of the Aliyah, I am delighted to call forward the kind-hearted, the brilliant, the humorous, the traffic-directing savant that is LBT's immediate past president, Lloyd Segan.
Yamod Eliyahu ben Levilaiche Lealiat HaTorah.
Baruch hu Adonai hamavorach. Baruch Adonai hamavorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Atem nitzavim chayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem, Roshechem, Shivtechem, Ziknechem, V'shodrechem kol ish Yisrael, Tapchem, Neshechem, V'gercha, Asher bekerev mechonecha, Mechotev etzecha ad shoev memecha. Le'overcha bivrit Adonai Elohecha, Uvelato asher Adonai Elohecha, Koreit imcha hayom, Lema'an hakim otcha hayom, Lo le'am v'hu yehiyeh lecha, le'elohim ka'asher diber lach, v'cha'asher nishba la'avotecha, la'avraham, le'yitzchak, u'le'yaakov. V'lo idchem levadchem anochi koreit et chabrit chazot, ve'et ha'ele chazot, ki et asher yishno po imanu omed hayom. Lifnei Adonai Eloheinu ve'et asher ininu po imanu hayom. Ki ha-mitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavcha hayom lo niflethi mimcha ve'lo rehokahi lo v'shamayim hi lemor Mi ya'ale lanu hashamayma v'yichachecha lanu v'yashmi'inu ota v'na'asena v'lo me'ever layam hi lemor. Mi ya'avor lanu el ever hayam v'yichachecha lanu v'yashmi'inu ota v'na'asena ki karov alecha chadavar me'od beficha uvevavcha la'asoto. Re'e netati lefanecha hayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et hara asher anochi mitzavcha hayom la'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lelechet bidrachav ve'lishmor mitzvotav ve'chukotav u'mishpatav ve'hayita ve'ravita uvrechecha Adonai Elohecha ba'aretz asher atava shama l'rishta ve'im yifnei levavcha V'lo tishma, v'nidachta v'hishtachavita le'elohim acherim v'avatam, higadati lachem hayom ki avod tovedun lo ta'arichum yamim al ha'adama, asher ata over et hayarden levoshama l'rishta. He'idoti b'chem hayom et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz hachayim ve'hamavet, netati lefanecha chabracha v'chaklala uvacharta b'chayim lema'an techiyeh ata v'zarecha le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lishmoa b'kolo u'ledov kavo ki hu hayecha ve'orech yamecha l'shevet al ha'adama asher nishba Adonai la'avotecha le'avraham le'yitzhak u'le'yaakov letet lehem.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
We now turn our hearts to our prayer for healing, the Misha Berach. On this day of fasting, we gain greater awareness of where hunger resides in our body and our emotional core, what it triggers in our memories and our desires. We are asked to peel back some of the protective barriers between us and the world to reconnect with our own fragility and the fragility of those around us. As we prepare for the Misha Berach, you are invited to connect with those in your life and around the world in need of healing. Let us join heart to heart, connecting to one another and to those beyond our walls as we sing the Misha Berach, page 273.
Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach imotenu mekor havracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Please rise as we dress the Torah. Got it. Okay. A prayer for our country, our land of Israel, and our world. Avinu Malkeinu, eternal source of love and guidance, we assemble as one to greet this new year with new eyes, aware as never before of the inextricable link that binds all of humanity as one. As people throughout the world pray, each in their own way, for health and safety, for an end to the plague, our voices in this holy community merge in prayer for our country, for our land of Israel, and for the entirety of the human family. For all three face a profound moment of truth as our new year arrives. May our commitment to our country and our choice of its leaders reflect the moral character we see in ourselves, for the destiny of our nation is squarely in the hands of all its citizens. May our people's ancient home turn toward the light of justice, compassion and human dignity, and away from the darkness of oppression and violence, so that all who are bound to this land of holiness will know hope, peace, and liberation. And Eternal One, let this new year be a time of worldwide healing, with the cries of those of every race and belief in near and distant lands reaching our hearts and calling us to responsibility. Cause us to see and remember the earth's oppressed who suffer from the most impoverishment and hunger, powerlessness, and pandemic. The hammer of chaos beats loudly in our time. Let us meet it with the hammer of justice. May we sanctify our lives by being among those who kindle light in every dark valley of humankind. And let us say together, Amen.
Eitz Chaim hi למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש ימינו כקדם חדש ימינו כקדם.
Our Vidui, our Yom Kippur prayers for forgiveness begin on page 292. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. Shema Kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. True sacrifice to God is a penitent spirit. You treasure a crushed and repentant heart. For you are close to the brokenhearted, and you give strength to a suffering soul. You are the healer of shattered hearts. You are the one who binds up their wounds. For thus says the high and exalted one who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell in a high and holy place, but also with the downcast and lowly, to bring new life to despondent souls, to restore and revive repentant hearts. Return now, Israel, to Adonai your God, for you have fallen because of your sin. Take words with you and return to God. Ask the Eternal, forgive what is wrong, accept what is good. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. We set before you the wrongs we have done. We trust in your compassion, for you know who we are. Shema Kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. On page 296.
Avotenu v'imotenu tavo lefanecha tefilatenu ve'al titala mitachinatenu ve'al titala מתחינתנו.
תבוא לפניך תפילתנו, ואל תתעלם מתחינתנו, שאין אנחנו עזי פנים, וכשעורף לומר לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו.
We read together on page 299. For the sin we committed against you, through evading and avoiding, because we could not face the truth. For our flight into hypocrisy and deception, because we did not dare to speak it. For the facts we dissembled, and all we glossed over, for the excuses we made, for feeding our bodies and starving our souls, for interfering with the souls of others and neglecting their needs, for shifting our responsibilities, for reproaches and recriminations, for our foolishness, our folly, and false standards, for seeing these things only in others, never in ourselves, for our complacency which blinds us, and our self-righteousness which lessens us, for calculating kindness and measuring out pity, for charity that is cold and prayers without feeling, for withholding our love, for the appeals that we ignored and the people whom we refused, for the affection which died and our lives that became bitter, for the visions which faded, the ideals we neglected, and the opportunities we lost, for the fear of change and renewal, and our unbelief, for saying prayers aloud but refusing to listen, for being our worst enemy. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביודעין ובלא יודעים.
The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבלי דעת, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בריצת רגליים להרע.
The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחוזק יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזלזול הורים ומורים.
The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בקשיות עורף.
The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובחסב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בקלות ראש.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשיח שפתותינו, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצרות עין.
The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and harm we have caused in your world through envy.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
For all these failures of judgment and will,
God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגלוי ובסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשנאת חינם.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, and harm we have caused in your world by hating without cause.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפריקת עול, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במאכל ובמשתה.
The ways we have wronged you by losing self-control, and harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב.
The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and harm we have caused in your world by hardening our hearts.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנשך ובמרבית, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במשא ובמתן.
The ways we have wronged you through greed and exploitation, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהיהור הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות.
The ways we have wronged you through our innermost thoughts, and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכפת שוחד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחילול השם.
The ways we have wronged you by offering or accepting bribes, and harm we have caused in your world by profaning your name in public.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
We'll take some moments now for our silent cheshbon hanefesh, our silent introspection and confession. There are words for those with the prayer book, words to guide us in this introspection found on pages 308 and 309. But most importantly, this is a time for each one of us to be alone with our souls in silence and in truth.
From all appearances, Tahani had made it. She was glamorous, wealthy, attractive, socially connected, and more importantly, she was diligent and generous. Seemingly devoted to improving the lives of the less fortunate, she raised millions for countless philanthropic causes, from fighting hunger to protecting wildlife. Of all people, she was destined to end up in the good place, wasn't she? Over the course of 4 seasons, NBC's The Good Place became a rabbi's dream, as it wrestled with questions of what happens to us when we die. What's our purpose as humans? What do we owe each other? And of course, what does it mean to be good and to continually grow and improve, all examined with clever humor and joyful puns. The premise of the show, for those who may be unfamiliar, is that in the afterlife, we either end up in the bad place or in the good place, a utopian heaven of sorts for those who live especially exemplary lives. And I won't try to reveal too much, but I do have one spoiler. Tahani, like the show's main character Eleanor, ultimately discovers that she does not end up in the good place. For though she was an active and successful philanthropist, she was also self-absorbed and insincere. Her actions weren't primarily motivated by her concern for others' welfare. They were driven by a constant quest for external validation, seeking to earn the approval of her parents, the envy of her talented and renowned sister, as well as the notoriety of the celebrities she so desperately sought to surround herself with. Every charitable deed, every laudable undertaking was nothing more than an exercise to quiet the unworthiness and to fill the loneliness that she felt so deeply inside. Ultimately, with the help of her friends and fellow Good Place misfits, Tahani changes. She discovers her own self-worth, and in so doing learns to empathize, to sacrifice, to prioritize the needs of others. Then, to her and our surprise, we watch as she and her friends shift their focus from securing their spots in the illustrious Good Place to designing an afterlife that benefits all humanity. One of them, a philosophy professor, casually suggests, what if humans spend their time in the afterlife the way I did, learning through a series of trials what they did wrong on Earth before being sent back to take another crack at being a good person? Thus, does the team settle on a plan that offers every human a chance to reach the good place. Luckily, however, we don't have to wait until the afterlife for the opportunity to become better people. In fact, the very purpose of this day is to rehearse that same conversation each visitor to the good place has with Michael, the afterlife architect, upon arrival. Dressed in white, foregoing food, stripped of our finery and delights, we appear on Yom Kippur as nothing more than ourselves, with no distinguishing features other than the choices we've made or neglected to make. But for us, the results aren't final. Michael isn't taking us into the next room. We get the chance to make teshuvah, new year after new year, to change the outcome, to grow and become better people, and in so doing, to share our unique gifts with the world. Stanford University psychologist Dr. Carol Dweck describes this approach to life as a growth mindset. By acknowledging that no matter who we are today, we can always grow and change, we prime our minds to develop our intellectual, physical, even spiritual and moral capacities. Our basic qualities, then, are things that we can cultivate through our efforts, our strategies, and help from others. Too often, however, we consciously or subconsciously limit ourselves by approaching life with what she identifies as a fixed mindset. Whenever we say, "That's just who I am," or "I can't do anything to change that," we're adopting this fixed mindset, limiting our ability to grow. Just think of any of the times we hesitated to try something new because we assumed we'd fail, or to connect with someone different because we feared rejection, or to welcome a new idea or a new person into our lives because we thought we already knew everything we needed to know about them. These are all instances of a fixed mindset, an approach that we begin learning at a very young age. It reminds me of our almost 3-year-old daughter, Shifra. Whenever she accomplishes something extraordinary, like building a tower or remembering the words to a song, Josh and I immediately respond with praise, telling her how smart she is in hopes of building her self-confidence and her self-understanding as an intelligent girl. But as I explored these ideas further, I realized that with the best of intentions, I was unknowingly cultivating a fixed mindset in Shifra. For as Dweck's colleague, Dr. Jo Boaler, shares in her book, Limitless Mind, one of the ways children, even those as young as 3, develop a damaging fixed mindset is from a small, seemingly innocuous word that is used ubiquitously. The word is smart. Boaler goes on to describe that despite our best intentions, when we praise children as being smart, they first think, oh, good, I'm smart. But later, when they struggle or fail, as we all do, they think, oh, I guess I'm not so smart, and constantly evaluate themselves against this fixed idea of intelligence. Rather than praising some innate and finite gift, we can instead praise their effort to fuel their ongoing acquisition of new learning. Shifra, I love how you built that tower. It's so creative. Though this may seem like a tiny, possibly insignificant distinction, it's anything but. And it's one that is built into our High Holy Days practice in ways you may never have noticed. When we confess our transgressions on this Day of Atonement, we only use verbs. Though we may have lied, we never call ourselves liars. Though we may have done something foolish or insensitive, we never call ourselves dumb or cruel. Because our tradition recognizes that at any moment we possess the power to grow, the ability to change. In fact, we're changing every moment, whether we like it or not. Boaler's research demonstrates that every single day when we wake up in the morning, our brains are different than they were the day before. Think about that. Every single day when we wake up in the morning, our brains are different than they were the day before. We're not the same people we were yesterday, and we don't have to be defined by yesterday's mistakes. Can you imagine how we might greet the day differently if we woke up and thought, I wonder what I can learn today? I wonder how I can change today. We need to replace the idea that learning ability is fixed with the recognition that we are all on a growth journey. Now, despite what my mother lovingly always tells me, and what I imagine countless other parents tell their children, this doesn't mean that we can be whatever we want to be. I'm certainly not becoming the next renowned nuclear physicist or composer. But a growth mindset suggests that our true potential is unknown and unknowable, and that we have the ability to develop qualities and to learn new things over a lifetime. It reminds us then to stop trying to prove that we're great or smart or capable. It's exhausting. And instead, invest in becoming better. To stop trying to hide our deficiencies and instead to welcome them as our best opportunities for growth. You see, neuroscientists have discovered that the times when we're struggling and making mistakes are actually the best times for brain growth. Research shows that when we make mistakes, our brains are actually more active creating growth than when we're getting things right. Mistakes literally contribute positively to strengthening our neural pathways. Our missteps, then, represent essential data points for developing our soul curriculum, guiding our path toward teshuvah. This vision of the creative power embedded in our failures is so fundamental to our tradition that it represents the basis of our people's name, Yisrael. We're first introduced to the biblical Yisrael as Jacob, who, entering the world on the heel of his brother Esau, moves through life using subterfuge and deceit while avoiding any and every possible confrontation. First, he tricks his eldest brother into giving him his inheritance. Next, he misleads his aging father into granting him the special blessing meant for the eldest child. Then he flees from Esau to his uncle Laban's house and marries his 2 daughters. And finally, after 20 years, when it's time for him to return to Canaan, Jacob again flees, departing in the middle of the night so that he doesn't have to face his father-in-law. But when Jacob returns to Canaan, he resolves to confront his brother Esau, no matter the danger. On the eve of their meeting, Jacob famously wrestles with a mysterious divine being. Rabbi Harold Kushner suggests that this encounter may be an account of Jacob's wrestling with his conscience, torn between his human tendency to avoid an unpleasant encounter and the divine impulse in him that urges him to do the difficult but right thing. We can imagine Jacob saying to himself, "Until now, I've responded to difficult situations by lying and running. I deceived my father. I ran away from Esau. I left Laban's house stealthily instead of confronting him." But by letting his conscience prevail, Jacob wins. He outgrows his identity as the trickster Jacob and becomes Yisrael, the one who contends with God and people instead of avoiding and manipulating them. At the end of the struggle, Jacob is physically wounded and emotionally depleted, but he's described as shalem, whole, at peace with himself. This image of wrestling, of struggling to battle the worst parts of ourselves so that we may grow in this new year, is exactly the work that has brought us here today. Teshuvah isn't neat and civilized, it's messy and painful. But as science and our tradition both acknowledge, it's not only possible, it's something that our brains and our souls are wired for. Perhaps it seems self-indulgent to consider the changes that we need to make within ourselves as the fate of our world and our country hang precariously in the balance, amid a devastating pandemic, with people of color terrified by those sworn to protect them, and the flames of hatred against all people, including ours, being repeatedly stoked in the halls of our highest offices. So much feels uncertain, so much outside of our control. And yet, deep down, we've always known that there are no shortcuts. To change our world for the better, we must begin by changing ourselves for the better. As Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the founder of Judaism's spiritual growth practice of Musar, taught, "When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world, but I found it was difficult to change the world. So I tried to change my country. When I found I couldn't change my country, I began to focus on my town. However, I discovered that I couldn't change my town, and so as I grew older, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realize that the only thing I can change is myself. But I've come to recognize that if long ago I had started with myself, then I could have made an impact on my family, and my family and I could have made an impact on our town, and that in turn could have changed our country, and we could have all indeed changed the world." The journey toward a better world begins inside you, inside me. By starting with ourselves, growing into our more expansive, loving, curious, daring versions of ourselves, ever changing, ever learning, we end with the world, devoting our considerable gifts toward creating family, toward fashioning community, toward repairing the brokenness of our beautiful and troubled world. And if recent history is any indication, our families, our communities, our country, our world desperately need us at our very best. Because in the end, there's no good place to get to. Our purpose is to be constantly on the way to a better place, our better place, growing mistake by mistake, failure by failure, for ourselves and for one another. Then shall we emerge from our trials, perhaps wounded and depleted, but also shalem, whole and at peace. May this be the blessing we give ourselves, our family, our community, and our world in this new year. Gamar Chatima Tova.
Shana Tova. I am Iris Wyman, and I am proud to be Leobeck Temple's president. I so hope that you are feeling enriched by your Yom Kippur experience with our community. The Jewish tradition on Yom Kippur is that the morning service doesn't really have a formal conclusion, as we are supposed to see this morning as just our first step into a full and meaningful day. So before we conclude here, I want to bring your attention to the incredible mixture of new and long-beloved events that have been planned for this one-of-a-kind Yom Kippur. Please take note and join us as much as you can until the holiday ends with the setting of the sun. Shortly after the conclusion of this service, our family service, conducted on Zoom, will start at 11:30 a.m. Our entire clergy team will join in leading it, as they did on Rosh Hashanah. Please gather grandparents, parents, and children, wherever you all may be, and join us on Zoom. Our Yom Kippur study will be led at 11:30 a.m. by award-winning biblical scholar and LBT congregant, Rabbi Dr. Tamara Eskenazi. She will lead us in a discussion about the prophets of the High Holy Days. Congregations all over the world are honored to bring Dr. Eskenazi as a visiting scholar. We are delighted to have her home with us for Yom Kippur. Don't miss out on this very special opportunity at 11:30 a.m. For those looking to deepen your Yom Kippur through artistic expression, we invite you to join our congregant and talented artist and educator, Kathy Leader, from 1 o'clock to 1:45 p.m. for an exercise in reflective art. And then our children's service, geared to those age 8 and younger, will be hosted by the clergy on Zoom at 2 o'clock p.m. Also at 2 o'clock p.m., those who would like to make a yoga practice part of their Yom Kippur experience are invited to join Natalie Bennett, one of our congregation's longtime yoga instructors, for a special Yom Kippur afternoon yoga session. Our annual musical meditation will begin at 4 o'clock p.m., followed by our afternoon service at 4:30 and our Yizkor memorial service at 5 o'clock. Our Nehila concluding service will begin immediately following Yizkor, and it will conclude at approximately 6:30 p.m., when we will gather for a virtual Break the Fast celebration to end our Yom Kippur together. I hope by now that you have registered for services. If you have, you should have received service links this morning. If you have any issues or if you forgot to register, please email highholydays@leobecktemple.org, and our staff will respond as quickly as possible. Because of the overwhelming response we had from people wishing to participate in all services, although we ask that you register for the services you wish to attend, anyone who registered for any service will receive links to all services. We hope you will enjoy them all. On behalf of our Board of Trustees, our clergy, our staff, and the entire LBT community, I want to wish you an easy fast and a Gamar Chatima Tova. May you be sealed in the Book of Life for blessing on this Yom Kippur.